is trying to paint a Vermeer, who some consider the greatest painter of all time. At the face of it, that seems almost impossible, because I'm not a painter. I'm a computer graphics guy, and we use technology to make a realistic, beautiful image.
Tim and I have been friends for a really long time. I didn't know he had this whole little sub-obsession with Vermeer.
I'm looking at this image, and I see something that looks like it came out of a video camera. This fall-off of light is something that an artist really cannot see. There must be a way to actually get the colors accurate with mechanical means. I propped up a small mirror at a 45-degree angle right on the forehead. You can see that they match.
Holy cow.
It took me about half an hour to learn how to operate a paintbrush.
Good for you. It took me 40 years.
It's possible that he was more of a tinkerer, more of a geek. And in that way, I feel a kinship with him.
So I'm going to construct a replica of the exact room where Vermeer painted?
That's right. The harpsichord, the Spanish chair, the viola da gamba, the rug. The wind's trying to blow my shape. Well, this certainly is not easy.
This is very ingenious.
That's where the painting is, Buckingham Palace.
Using Tim's device, you've become a machine.
I'm proposing an alternate history of Vermeer.
Was Vermeer a machine?
Oh my God.
I think it might disturb quite a lot of people.
If we weren't making a film, would I quit? Yeah, I definitely would. Yeah, I would find something else to do right now. Good evening. I started this company called New Tech in the 1980s to do computer graphics and video production. And that's my field. How did I end up in a movie about art? Well, I've known Penn Jillette from Penn and Teller, the Las Vegas magicians, for about 25 years. And one day, Penn called me and he said, I'm spending time with my kids and with my partner, and I'd like to have an adult conversation with a friend. Can you please come to Las Vegas and talk to me? I said, sure. So we sat down for steaks, and he said, please talk to me about something besides show business or politics. I don't want to talk about that. And I said, well, what do you know about Vermeer? And he said, the Dutch painter? And I said, yeah, I've been thinking about Vermeer, and you know, he painted these super realistic pictures 350 years ago. They look like photographs. And I think I figured out how he did it, with a machine. And he said, what? And I explained the machine to him. And I said, the idea is that you have this little mirror. And I explained it to him, and he said, I totally get this. I understand this. It's similar to what we do in magic with mirrors. What are you going to do with this? And I said, well, I think I'd like to build a full-size room and fill it with Dutch furniture, build the machine, and paint a Vermeer. And he said, then what are you going to do? I said, well, I'll maybe write a paper about it. And he said, that's a stupid idea. This should be a movie. So he said, let's go to Los Angeles tomorrow and start pitching this movie. And that was over 5 years ago. And we thought it would be a very short project, take maybe 1 year, but it took a long, long time. We asked Teller, Penn's partner, to direct the film. Teller is a director. And Teller's parents are both painters. We're both painters. So he was very interested in art. And he accepted the job. And Penn said, if Teller directs it, it'll be very strange but good. So if you'd like to see this very strange movie, it's available digitally on iTunes and Vudu, and DVD from Mix-Up. So what do we know about Vermeer? He painted this picture, Girl with a Pearl Earring, and he painted about maybe 40 pictures in 20 years. He worked very slowly. He was forgotten until the late 1800s, when he was rediscovered. And he basically died in obscurity, but his pictures all have this incredible photorealistic look. Now, this may be a picture of Vermeer on the left side. It may be a self-portrait. We're not sure. But this was a bordello scene with a prostitute, and there was a tradition that if you painted a scene like that, you would have the painter looking at the viewer. And so that's why we think this may be Vermeer. And he's also wearing a traditional painter's costume. So that's probably what he looked like. But his art looks very different. You can see on the left is a Gabriel Metsu painting, and on the right is a Vermeer. He had a very, very photorealistic look. So I got started on this crazy idea really when I read this book by David Hockney, the great English artist, who wrote a book called Secret Knowledge. And David Hockney looked at European art through time, and he noticed that painting took a very radical change in the late Renaissance. And this was about the same time that optics were getting good. And David Hockney's theory in this book is that painters started to use optics, and that's why they got more realism in their pictures. A man named Philip Stedman wrote a book called Vermeer's Camera. Stedman looked at 6 of the Vermeers, and he sort of reverse engineered the geometry of the paintings, and he determined, looking at these 6 pictures, that Vermeer probably used a lens, and he was able to determine the exact position of the lens. And basically, the odds are very high that this is true, about 2,000 to 1, that this did not happen by chance. So, what Stedman was thinking, and what Hockney were thinking, was that you could take this projection and trace on this projection. It's kind of like a very dim video projector, and you can see the image projected from the lens, and you can trace it. But neither Hockney or Stedman could have really explained how you could paint inside that dark box. It turns out a camera obscura works fine for tracing shapes, but not for colors. You cannot get the colors right. It seems like you should be able to paint on that projection, but it does not work. As soon as you start to paint, you obscure what you're trying to paint, and you can't see the true color of your paint, so you have no idea what you're painting. It's a waste of time. So I had this idea. I was in the bathtub one night, and suddenly it occurred to me that there was a way that you could trace the color. You could get an exact copy of the color as well as the shape of what you were painting. And I go, if Vermeer had known that trick, that would explain why his paintings look like they do. So I came home and I tried this experiment on my table, my kitchen table, and I tried to make a copy of a photograph using this idea. Now, this is my very first oil painting. I'm not a painter. I took art in high school, but I never got into oil painting or acrylic, but you can see that I was able to make a copy. Now, as I look down through this device, I am seeing in the mirror, I'm seeing the photograph. If I look over the edge of the mirror, I see my painting, and that's the trick. Right at the edge of the mirror, I change the color of the paint until it matches. And this works very well. This was my first oil painting, and that's the result. So I go, okay, this is pretty powerful. So I started to go online and search for other people that were thinking about this idea, and I couldn't find anything. There was nobody talking about this. So I decided to do an experiment where I would build a Vermeer room and try to make a Vermeer painting with the same machine. So I wanted the lighting to be the same. I wanted all the objects to be the same. I had to build a lens. I had to melt the glass. I had to make a 17th century lens. This is me grinding the lens because modern lenses are too good. I wanted the experiment to be authentic. And so I had to then build all the furniture in this room. This furniture exists in museums, but I couldn't get it. So first I made a computer model. Now I know how to run computer graphics, so I made a computer model of the room. This is a model of the room that I made before making the furniture. Here I am working on the windows. And now I'm assembling the windows. I've got most of the pieces. And the harpsichord, this musical instrument, was like the Steinway piano. This is before pianos. And so I had to make a copy of this too. So here I'm using computer-controlled machines to make the legs. Here is the body of the machine. And then finally I'm putting the decorations on. Now the decorations, we know exactly what they look like because these instruments are in museums. There are dozens of these instruments made by Rutgers. So we know exactly what that paper looks like, and I was able to duplicate it. So the chair is called a Spanish chair. Not really from Spain, but they called it that, I guess, because it had leather. And I had to make a copy of that chair. Here's the copy of the chair. That's my daughter. She did a lot of the cinematography. And then there's my finished room. So now I have the room, I have the machine, and I'm ready to paint. So this is my first day of painting. I'm starting with the wall at the back of the room. This, you can see the machine here. It's a system consisting of a lens, a curved mirror, and a flat mirror. That's the machine. You're painting in daylight. You're not in a dark room. Here's what I see when I look down through that mirror. So in the center of the mirror is the actual real room out there, and I look over the edge of the mirror and I see my painting, and I match the color. And I move my head around to see different parts. How hard would it be to paint people? I got my daughter Claire to be the model for the lady playing the harpsichord. Here I am painting the girl in the room. And it turns out it took about 4 or 5 hours to paint her face. I started painting the front of the harpsichord, this very intricate pattern, and I'm basically tracing. You know, I see exactly where my brush is supposed to go. I don't know how to paint. But I noticed something strange on this decoration. It appeared curved in my mirror. So I said, well, Vermeer didn't have that problem. His harpsichord was not curved in the mirror. But then I looked closely at the painting. There's the curvature I see in the mirror. And if I squeeze the Vermeer, this is the Vermeer painting, I've squeezed it sideways, and you can see that it actually does have that distortion from the same distortion that I saw in the curved mirror. So this is sort of evidence that maybe Vermeer used the same machine. Of course, we don't know. There's no record that he ever did anything like this. Here's the finished painting. And this is my second oil painting, basically. And this is probably the best evidence that Vermeer may have used a machine like this. So we started with 2,400 hours of material. We edited it down into 80 minutes, and thanks to Farley Ziegler, the producer, and Patrick Sheffield, the editor, they made a fairly successful movie out of it. So here on the left you see the Vermeer, and on the right you see the Tim's Vermeer. So what does this mean about Vermeer? Does it make him less of an artist? No. If he used this machine, I think he was like most artists of the Dutch Golden Age. I think he was trying to use any tool possible to make the best image. And I think art and technology are two sides of the same coin, human creativity. Thank you very much.